artist, I wanted to show you how you can do some shading and add value to your artwork. Value is the lightness and the darkness of a color. Value can make your artwork look much more real than if you don't add value to your art. If you notice on this pumpkin, the pumpkin is darker on the bottom and then lighter on the top where the light is shining down, the sunlight, because this pumpkin is outside. Let's read this story and then we will draw and shade our own pumpkins.
How Big Could Your Pumpkin Grow? By author and illustrator Wendell Minor. At the pumpkin farm, we pick the perfect pumpkin. Some are little, some are big, and some are giant-sized. Giant pumpkin festivals are tons of fun. Will the biggest pumpkin set a world record? Wow! What can you do with an enormous pumpkin? Carve it into a boat and race in the regatta. Row, row, row your pumpkin. The legendary Paul Bunyan and his Blue Ox Babe were giants too. They liked to think big. If they gave you giant pumpkin seeds, how big could your pumpkin grow? Would it rise as high as hot air balloons at the Fall Fiesta Fair? Or beam as bright as the lighthouse at the beach? Your gigantic pumpkin could glow like the skyscrapers, but watch out! Horns will honk on the bridge when it blocks traffic. Beep, beep! They do things big in Texas. Would your giant pumpkin be boss in a jumbo cowboy hat? Would your stupendous pumpkin make a super splash atop a towering waterfall? 3, 2, 1, blast off! Wouldn't your astronomical pumpkin smile to see a rocket zoom into space? Could the most colossal pumpkin fill the Grand Canyon? Who knows? Isn't it fun to imagine giant pumpkins everywhere you go? Alright, so I've gathered a variety of crayons and I'm going to use these to do my entire picture. I'm going to start out with the yellow crayon because I want to draw lightly. I don't want to have the black bold outline that I sometimes like on my artworks. I first start with almost an oval and then draw a curvy line stem. Now I'm going to draw the sections of a small pumpkin. If you'd like to pause the video, you can start and stop it to help yourself draw the pumpkin. I'll keep moving right along, but feel free to start and stop. So whatever I draw on the left side of my pumpkin, I make sure I mirror that on the right. Sometimes pumpkins can be a little deformed too. They aren't all perfectly round. I'm making these pieces look like they're on the back side of my pumpkin, kind of like we're looking down at the top of the pumpkin, but we can also see the front. And I'm working from light to dark. I'm leaving all that white space in each section of my pumpkin because I want it to look like the light is shining down on my pumpkin. So I'm going to leave some white highlights. And when you're working with crayons, the easiest thing that you can do is just leave the white of the paper. And if you'll notice, I'm coloring kind of lightly with my yellow crayon. And next, what I'll do is I'll start adding in the yellow orange and then some orange. So like I said, I'm working from light to dark. And I'm not pressing down very hard with my yellow crayon either. It's easier to add more, but it's harder to take away. Sometimes you can erase a little bit of crayon, but most of the time you can't get it all off your paper. So now I'm coming in with the yellow orange. And I'm lightly coloring and I'm moving down a little bit from where I did all the yellow. I'm not completely covering up all that yellow. I'm kind of trying to go around it. So I'll start off light and then I'll gradually build up layers of the color by the time that I am done with my pumpkin. Just keep adding the orange around just as you need, just as you feel. The great thing about doing these lesson videos is that if you've got more than one sheet of paper and you feel like, I didn't really do my absolute best on this, but I figured it out, you could always try again. You could do a practice copy, and then you could do a final copy. And here I'm just adding a little bit of orange on the back of the pumpkin. And I like how light this feels. I love a bold black outline, and sometimes we do that in class, but I'm loving how light and bright this is. Now I'm coming back in with the regular orange. I'm pressing down a little bit harder, but this regular orange color, the basic orange, is a little bit darker than the yellow orange, because of course the yellow orange is a mixture of yellow and orange. And I keep going up the sides of each section, just adding a little bit of the color, just adding a little bit of each color as I go. You can see my pumpkin starting to look like it has those individual sections too. So I'll just keep on going with my dark orange, and as I go, if I decide I want to add some more, I certainly can. So I'll keep that going around the pumpkin. And then I'll also add a little bit to the back side as well, even though the light is shining down on the top of the pumpkin and the front of the pumpkin. If the light was coming from the right, I would only leave highlights on the right side of my pumpkin. If the light was coming from the left, I would only have highlights on the left side of my pumpkin. You can actually choose where you'd like your light source to come from. If the sun is shining on the left side of your house, the left side of your house is going to look brighter than the right side. Alright, now I'm coming into the back and adding in a little bit more orange. Pumpkins also don't necessarily have to be orange. For this demonstration, I'm doing an orange pumpkin, but sometimes pumpkins can be green. Sometimes pumpkins can be white. I love the look of a white pumpkin, but it's kind of hard to color a white pumpkin on a white piece of paper. It can be done though. You can see the shadows on a white pumpkin and you could shade it. Alright, now I'm coming back in with my orange, and I'm just making it a little bit darker by adding more pressure. If I press down harder on that orange, then it's going to get darker for me. And I didn't cover up all the light orange that I put up there, but I made it darker along the bottom. Now I'm working on the stem. The stem of a pumpkin can have many different colors on it. I'm using brown for this, but I've seen stems that are brown. I've seen stems that are tan and brown. I've seen stems that are green and black, and maybe even some yellow on them. So I am pressing down hard to get a pretty brown color from my brown crayon, but if I color lightly like I am now, I'm going to get a light brown or a tan color, and that looks nice in contrast to where I press down hard with my brown crayon. And the pumpkin is almost complete. I'm actually taking the brown and kind of putting it in between those sections, putting it in those creases, and it just defines my pumpkin a little bit more. You can see those little sections a little bit better. You can also use the brown to add a little bit of shading along the bottom of the pumpkin. So I'm going to take my brown and I'm just kind of hitting the bottom, because whenever a pumpkin curves under, because it's a round shape, there might be a little bit more shadow on the bottom. Alright, so I'm going to start thinking about a background too while I'm finishing up this coloring. And whenever I do the background, you can do whatever you'd like. You could make a crazy abstract background. You could make it look like it's sitting in a pumpkin patch. You could add the vine to it if you'd like, because pumpkins do grow on vines. And I'm just coming back in and adding a few more bits of color because I feel like maybe the highlights are a little bit too long. So I'm taking that yellow orange and I'm barely coloring on some of that white. And that just brings the color up a tad more. And that makes the highlights be on the top of the pumpkin. But be thinking about what kind of background that you would like. And I picked out some blue and green crayons, so you'll see what I'm going to do with those. My background is not going to be realistic, but I would love for you to send me pictures of your artwork. you can send it to me on my email if you'd like. I'm sure your pumpkins are going to look amazing. I feel like mine is pretty good now, and I will start adding in that background. Happy creating!